she thought he was just working late again, another ordinary Wednesday night. But when she stumbled upon his work phone, the truth hit her like a thunderclap. Messages, pictures, and conversations that weren't meant for her eyes revealed a side of him she had never imagined. Everything she believed about their life together suddenly teetered on the edge of collapse.
Hello, my friends. I am Olivia, and this is Olivia's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story.
I had always believed in the quiet rhythm of our life. Simple, steady, predictable. My husband, Daniel, was a dedicated man. I thought I knew him like the lines of my own hands. He left for work at precisely 7:45 a.m., kissed me on the forehead, and sometimes, when he had a rare day off, made me pancakes that were slightly too sweet. Our apartment smelled faintly of vanilla candles, always lit by me in the evenings to keep the place warm and inviting. And yet, beneath all that comfort, I carried a subtle, gnawing unease. I wanted more than routine. I wanted honesty, transparency, the reassurance that the man I had trusted with my heart had no shadows. Daniel always said he was working late, and I, exhausted by my own job and a life full of errands and small domestic battles, took him at his word. Last Tuesday, though, something shifted. I was folding laundry when an unfamiliar shape fell from the side pocket of his blazer. It was a sleek black phone, distinctly labeled with a sticker that read, "Work Only." My heart skipped, and a sudden, icy pulse of curiosity coursed through me. I tried to ignore it at first. "It's probably nothing," I whispered to myself, pressing the folded towel to my chest as if it were a shield. But the phone seemed to hum with a silent insistence, as though it were daring me to peek. Finally, my trembling fingers lifted the device from the floor. The screen lit up immediately, and a cascade of notifications flooded the display. Texts, pictures, unread emails. My breath hitched as I scrolled. At first, it looked innocent. Corporate jargon, meeting reminders, client updates. But then I noticed the conversations that were not work-related. A series of messages from someone named Ava flickered across the screen. The words were casual, intimate, unsettling. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss the way you smile. Remember our last weekend getaway?" My stomach knotted, and the room felt suddenly too small, too suffocating. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was an old friend. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But the pictures told a story words never could. They were candid, stolen snapshots of Daniel, my Daniel, laughing, touching, leaning close to someone who wasn't me. A sharp, metallic taste of panic rose in my throat. My hands shook so violently I had to set the phone down, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. And then, as I lifted it again, a notification popped up, a live message from him. The content of it made my heart stop, froze time around me, and wrapped my mind in ice. It wasn't just a message, it was a whisper meant for someone else, something intimate that shattered the image of the man I thought I knew. My pulse raced, and I pressed the screen to read it, though a part of me screamed to stop. That's when I realized this wasn't just about late nights at the office. This was something I wasn't supposed to see. I sank onto the edge of our bed, the phone still clutched in my trembling hands. My heart was hammering like a drum in an empty hall, each beat echoing the questions I couldn't yet speak aloud. The apartment felt suffocating. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock suddenly deafening in their normalcy. How could the man who held me at night, whispered "I love you" before sleep, be someone else entirely when the lights were off and the doors were locked? I tried to think rationally, to tell myself I was overreacting. Maybe these were harmless messages.
Maybe, maybe I was misunderstanding. But deep down, my intuition, the quiet, insistent voice I'd learned to trust, told me otherwise. Every line I had read, every stolen photo, it all painted a picture that no amount of wishful thinking could erase.
I remembered the early days of our marriage, how Daniel had always been secretive about work, brushing off questions with a smile and a quick, "It's complicated." I used to think it was just his professional demeanor, that he needed space, that privacy was a harmless quirk. Now I realized it might have been something far more deliberate, a life carefully constructed in parallel to mine. The room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were pressing in, suffocating me with the weight of truth. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and shallow, and the faint creak of the floorboards as I shifted. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to call him and confront him immediately. Another part wanted to hide, to vanish into the shadows of our apartment and pretend this never happened, that my world hadn't just tilted on its axis. But curiosity, painful, urgent curiosity, pulled me forward. I opened more messages, tracing the threads of their conversations. Inside jokes, private nicknames, plans for secret trips. Everything I thought I knew about my husband suddenly felt like a lie I had been willingly believing. I felt nauseous, dizzy, as though I were staring into a mirror that reflected a stranger, and yet it was a stranger I had loved with my whole heart. Then I saw it, a photo that stopped me cold. Daniel smiling in a way I had only ever seen reserved for me, leaning close to Ava at a cafe we had never visited. But it wasn't just a snapshot. It was intimate, personal, a moment stolen from what should have been our life together. My chest tightened, tears pricking my eyes. My hands hovered over the phone, unsure whether to drop it or keep digging. And that's when the notification arrived. A new message. I picked it up with shaking fingers, dreading and craving the words at the same time. The preview alone made my stump twist. It was from Daniel himself, but not to me. The words, they were deliberate, tender, something I had never received from him in all our years of marriage. I felt my knees give way, and I sank to the floor, the phone resting on my lap like a loaded trigger. Everything I thought I understood about love, trust, and loyalty was unraveling before my eyes. And in that moment, a cold, undeniable certainty set in. My life had just changed forever, and there was no turning back. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I only knew one thing. I needed answers, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth that awaited me, because deep down, I already feared what I would find. The next morning, the apartment felt unbearably quiet, almost mocking. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every small sound, the hum of the heater, the distant rumble of traffic outside, made my chest tighten. I sat at the kitchen table, Daniel's work phone face up before me like a ticking bomb, my fingers brushing the screen almost absent-mindedly. I kept telling myself I needed to confront him, but each time I imagined his face, calm and unsuspecting, my courage faltered. By the time Daniel walked through the door that evening, I was a bundle of nerves, my emotions roiling beneath a veneer of forced normalcy. He hung up his coat, smiled at me the way he always did, and said, "Long day? How was yours?" His voice, warm and familiar, stabbed at my chest. How could someone so ordinary-looking be capable of such deception? I took a deep breath, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. "Daniel, we need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. His brow furrowed slightly, concern flashing across his face, and he leaned against the counter. "Okay, what's wrong?"
I couldn't bring myself to speak the words immediately. The phone lay between us like a wedge, its silent accusations louder than any scream. Finally, I pushed it toward him. "I found this," I whispered. "Your work phone. All these messages, these photos. Who is Ava?"
Daniel froze, and in that frozen moment, the room seemed to constrict around us. I saw something pass through his eyes, panic, guilt, maybe even shame, but also a flicker of resolve. He stepped closer, gently taking the phone from the table, his fingers brushing mine in a ghost of the intimacy we once shared. "Olivia, I can explain," he began, and his voice carried a weight that made my stomach lurch. I backed up instinctively, my emotions boiling over. "Explain? Explain this!" I gestured at the phone, at the evidence, at the betrayal that had been hiding in plain sight. "How long, Daniel? How long have you been lying to me?" He swallowed hard, his eyes not leaving mine. "It's not what it looks like. I never wanted you to see this way. I wasn't lying about us. I promise you that. Everything I did to protect you, to protect us." His hands shook slightly as he spoke, and for a brief moment, I wanted to believe him. But the knot in my chest was too tight, the anger and hurt too raw. Protect us? By hiding her? By sneaking around and pretending to work late every night? My voice cracked, the tears I had been holding back finally spilling over. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, and I could barely stand. My entire life felt like a house of cards, collapsing in slow, cruel motion. He reached out, desperate, and I flinched. "Olivia, please, let me explain before you make any decisions. I never stopped loving you. I just..." His voice faltered, breaking into a whisper that carried an aching vulnerability. "I didn't know how to tell you the truth until now." The words hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. My heart was screaming, my mind a storm of betrayal, confusion, and lingering love. I wanted to run, to leave, to escape this suffocating apartment and the man who had just shattered my world. And yet, part of me ached to hear him out, to understand why the man I married had led this double life. I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to stay. "All right," I said, voice trembling. "You have one chance to tell me everything, right now." Daniel nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. And then, finally, he began to speak. Daniel took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity I hadn't seen in years. "Olivia, Ava isn't who you think she is," he began, his voice tight with emotion. I blinked, disbelief warring with curiosity. She's my sister." I froze, my mind spinning. My mouth opened, but no words came out. "Your sister?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," he said, stepping closer, desperation in every movement. "We were estranged for years. After Mom passed, she fell on hard times. Homeless, no one to turn to. I couldn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. I set up the separate phone, the messages, even the trips. It wasn't romantic, Olivia. I was helping her, quietly, without dragging you into it, until I knew how to explain." I sank into the chair, my hands trembling as I tried to process. Every message, every photo, every moment I had assumed was a betrayal. It was a lifeline. My chest heaved with a mixture of relief, confusion, and lingering hurt. You kept all of this from me?" I asked, voice tight. Daniel nodded, his eyes glistening. "I thought I was protecting you. I wanted to tell you when the time was right. I never imagined you would find out like this. Olivia, I love you. Only you. Everything I did to help someone I couldn't abandon without losing you."
Tears spilled down my cheeks, but this time they were different. Tangled grief, relief, and love. I wanted to scream, to laugh, to collapse all at once. I had thought my life had shattered, that the foundation of our marriage had cracked beyond repair. But now, understanding the truth, I realized it was still intact, stronger in ways I hadn't imagined. I reached for his hand, hesitating for only a moment before letting my fingers intertwine with his. "Daniel, you should have trusted me," I whispered, voice breaking. "I love you, but I needed to know the truth." He squeezed my hand, guilt and relief mingling in his expression. "I know," he said softly. "I should have told you. I just didn't know how." The room was quiet, except for the steady rhythm of our breathing, the soft hum of the apartment, the faint warmth of the setting sun streaming through the blinds. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. The certainty that we could survive this, that love, even tested, could endure. I leaned against him, my head resting on his chest, and felt the tension drain from my body. "Promise me," I murmured. "No more secrets. No more phones, no more hiding. Just us." "I promise," he replied, holding me tightly. And in that embrace, I realized that the trust we rebuild after a storm isn't weaker, it's sharper, deeper, and more precious than before. Because sometimes the most painful truths lead to the strongest love.